This podcast is part of E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience. David Housel described it best. We are living the whole of the Auburn experience. Can be quantified, qualified in so many different ways through so many different people's experiences, lives, taste, sounds. I can keep going on and on with that. But at its heart, at its core, it is all about our sports, all about our culture, and yes, it is all about our Auburn family. And because it's about the Auburn family, alongside me again, your host, Kyle Loomis, co-host, Austin Scott, back in chair number 2. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back after good friend AJ Richardson took over for episode 44. A week I desperately wanted to be here. 44 is an incredible number in Auburn history, but AJ did a fantastic job. So thank you to him for filling in. I greatly appreciate it. I was in Dallas for a wedding, being actually, I'm not bragging, being the best man for a friend of mine that I met at Auburn. We wouldn't have known each other any other way. So I think that is a perfect way to come back to the Auburn experience, because being in his wedding and getting to be with a bunch of other guys we hung out with and met at Auburn. I was thinking about our podcast a lot just because those guys are definitely shaped my Auburn experience while there. So it was a good weekend, but thank you for having me back.
Well, I guess we can let you back since you kind of tied Auburn into what you were experiencing over there. I mean, listen, we have talked about The Bachelor on E2C Network. If we can tie Auburn to that, we can tie Auburn to anything. So it's not beyond the reach there. And also, I was impressed with AJ with his being prepared, did his homework for 44.
He was.
So you got numbers for us this week? Are you prepared?
45. I'm prepared, Kyle. We've there's a couple, and one, might be a little controversial, but it is Chuck Person.
It is,
and I think we're going to take the side of our good friend Clint, and say, just like we still have his jersey retired for his on the court achievements at Auburn. I think we can still mention him as our episode 45 sponsor. Not official.
Sure.
We
Yeah.
need to put
we'll
that
call
down
it
there
whatever.
in fine
Yeah,
print.
sure.
But another number 45 who we have discussed recently, Mr. Juan Joseph Gonzalez, who is back for Auburn baseball next year. And we're very happy about that. If I knew the Spanish way of saying welcome back, I would say it, but nobody wants to hear me butcher that.
I was going to say, I would try to think back to my 2 years of Spanish in high school, which I was a very good student at the time. Might I humble brag for a second, but clearly it didn't stick with me all that much. But yes, we got Joseph Gonzalez back for another. This is football season. You're not supposed to be getting me excited for baseball season. Okay. The fact that
we're still in July. We're still in July.
That's still baseball's being played professional level, which by the way, there is some professional players with Auburn ties that are starting to make their way up, not just through the minors, but into the pros and being prominent. Right. Edward Julian, Ryan Bliss, Josh, I always forget how to say his last name.
Palacios had a wonderful day today. Yep.
Just tearing it up. So great things still to talk about around Auburn baseball. Okay. Let's go through some Auburn potpourri really quick. There is a lot of things to discuss. We might even have to use some of these as bigger topics down the line. A couple things that I do want to mention, since you talked about a thing that was personal to you. I got to visit Auburn this past week and went into the Target there in downtown for the first time. Wow, that's weird.
Isn't it?
Would have loved to have any shopping option like that literally next to me. For those that you don't know, the Auburn Baptist Campus Ministries, where I used to live for a time, was literally next door. That grassy spot.
Oh, I forgot about that.
That was where I lived. So I literally could have left my bedroom and gotten what I needed if I was in need of something. Interesting. Any quick thoughts about just having whether it's Target or whatever, just something like that right there in downtown?
Yeah. I mean, I kid you not, Emily and I with the boys were with a couple friends last night, did go into the Target. They hadn't seen it. We're just going to walk through there. I'm sure, as you saw, stocked with dorm stuff right now.
Oh, yeah.
All that's going to be gone here in the next 2 weeks. But, I mean, what a great resource and we were talking about with these friends, you throw that and the Publix in together. What a great resource for those on campus that might not have a car, might not have brought their car to school. You are literally right there and can get what you need in a short, reasonable walk. I have no doubt that those places are going to be successful. And Kyle, if I'd be lying to you if I said when I walked through that Target and you pass like the clothes section, you pass like the dorm life section, and then you do get to some groceries. The first aisle is the alcoholic section. And I have a feeling come Saturdays when people are missing or forgot or need a little supplemental, I think that is going to do quite well on Saturdays. And I'm not sure it'll be fully stocked come game time. So I think that Target's going to do just fine.
Oh, it's going to do just fine. Whether it was a Target or they put a Walmart downtown, something like that. We discussed this with the whole Kroger situation being not too far off. It's been very much needed for college campus life, and so it's going to do pretty well. So I'm sure we'll be talking about interesting tales from Target at some point.
I like that. Interesting tales from Target. And Kyle, we're on the live show and we don't reference our chat on the podcast very much, but WT brings up a great point. They're going to sell a lot of toilet paper at that Target.
Yes, they are.
They're going to sell a lot of toilet paper.
Absolutely, they are. Okay, other potpourri stuff that we need to hit tonight. One of the things that I found interesting this week was that they dropped. Well, I guess it wasn't interesting. They dropped the news for Fan Day. I thought maybe it was a little bit earlier, but maybe it's just the perfect time to do so. It's more so that it's earlier in the fall camp schedule than I thought it was going to be. August 12th, Auburn will be hosting. It's got a longer name. I think it's called the Auburn Football Family Preseason Kickoff, AKA just call it Fan Day. Back to the old schedule, Austin, from 2:30 to 3:30 for the general public. There will be a On to Victory NIL collective event right before that. But you can get your autographs from the football players, the coaches, some of the other, I think volleyball will be there. Soccer will be on the road, but the old way of doing things, not the kind of carnival event and then the open practice, which I didn't mind, frankly, but we're back to the old way of doing things. So it's nice to see that coming back.
It is. And it's kind of a return to normalcy in a way. I think a lot of us wondered, would this kind of thing ever come back with NIL? But I think that's one of the good things about these collectives that are working for the student athletes is that they've got, whole teams signed, and now they can put on these kind of events to benefit them, benefit the fans and all that. So I'm excited for it. I think I'm with you. I kind of liked the practice, but it was also kind of like, how much are we really seeing here?
Right.
It's hot. Is this what we all really want to be doing? So I think it'll be a good, it seems like the right thing for this new regime to kind of just be immersed in the fans and in experience. So I think
get back to the way of doing things beforehand that people really seem to like. And I think there was some validation in doing what they did, given coming out of COVID and the nature of not wanting to expose a lot of people to, based on what we all knew back then. Or what we thought we knew back then. So I had no problems with the ways they did it back then, but returning to some normalcy is another pleasant sign for the Auburn family. And I know that they're very excited. I wanted story that from my time in Auburn this week, very short trip, that I wanted to mention. I got to go to Niffers again. And
did you?
I did. And I'm sorry, I did not get the Cadillac. It's not my cup of tea. I know I failed you in the podcast, but let me tell you what I did have. The Pearl.
We spent like 3 episodes on that, Kyle.
We did, and I love the concept. I love their heart behind it. It's just not my cup of tea for what I want when I go to Niffers.
That's fine. I'd rather you not waste your money. That's fine.
But the Pearl, my goodness, it may be my new favorite one there. Have you tried that one?
I know I've looked at it. I don't think I've tried it. Tell me what's on it.
I can't even remember now, hardly, but I just remember putting that sandwich in my mouth, and I was like, this is amazing. Like, it was some barbecue type of situation, but it's a barbecue burger, essentially bacon. Oh man, it was just the sauce. Oh, it had like sweet chili sauce or something like that as its barbecue sauce, and it was not spicy at all, but it was just perfect. So man, I cannot believe that I have not tried the Pearl before. And the fun thing about them naming these after the coaches and big figures of, and I guess you could say coach too, because Cadillac was the coach for a little bit, if we haven't talked about that enough. Real quick, wanted to mention this too, just for point of reference. The schedules have now been released for not only football, obviously, but for volleyball. Soccer's already been out, and now equestrian, which does run in the fall partially, is out too. We are just waiting, and I know most people aren't really waiting for this, but cross country is the last one we're waiting for. Y'all's fall schedules, folks, is just about set. Tune in. That's all I got to say. I know Austin's going to be excited for all these things.
I mean, we're close to the semester starting, which means we're close to all these fall sports kicking off. August 1st happens. If you're listening, at the time this is put out, August 1st happens this week. Like
Yes.
that August, while it doesn't really feel like it down here, is a fall month in my opinion. We're here. It doesn't feel like a fall month, but it's a
But
fall
I've
month.
never thought of it as a fall month. I've always thought of it as the
You
last
still think
month
it's
of summer.
summer?
Yes, to me. So, okay, we're going to debate something that's not even related here. To me, winter is December, January, February. Spring is March,
Yes.
April, and May. June, July, August, and then September, October, November is fall.
I mean, that your math makes sense there. I've just never considered August as summer. But I guess you're right. But whatever. I think, where I think I get into the problem here is I think of fall as being autumn and
Yes.
autumn and August,
Well, and school
So,
starts. Okay. So
correct.
I understand why you went
You don't
there.
go to school in the summer.
Well, some people
I
do
mean,
these
down
days.
here we do, but
Your math was also correct, but you're still wrong. So
yeah, that's fair. But now, if we really want to get into it, though, the weird thing is when the official summer starts, which is my anniversary, July 21st. But down here, it's been summer for much longer than July 21st, right?
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Okay. Yeah, that's
We
fair.
we both have bones to pick.
We will defer to each other and say we both had valid points. We'll just
Yes.
argue about it later. But for now, we want to jump into the rest of our topics. We're going to talk a little Big Cat weekend and a little fall camp preview coming up right now. Big Cat weekend, what a time it was. Woo! It's been happening since the days of it was being introduced. I think 2009 was the first year with Gene Chizik, yeah. Trooper Taylor, Curtis Looper, all that crew, and hyping that up. And, people, not celebrities, but celebrities in the high school recruiting realm popping in and out. And the legacy is cemented with this thing. Did you think it could get any better than that, how it's been built up to, but this weekend could get bigger, Austin?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know if it had staying power back then, just because it wasn't really happening. But I mean, now it has become the thing, and especially for Auburn, like there's, even in the lulls, there's been times where it's been a little rougher outlook. But big time kids have not wanted to miss this weekend, and it was no different this weekend with a new staff who really made it an emphasis, which is excellent. And it paid off, as we're about to get into. I'm sure it paid off in a big way this weekend and set the stage up for some carrying that momentum into the season.
Would you say it flipped the script, Austin?
It might have flipped the script, Kyle.
Literally. Let me lay the groundwork, and then we can kind of break it down with some different parts of this. I won't even call it a weekend, a week. So even though this first part didn't occur on the weekend, I think you counted in with it because it just builds on top of itself. We started the week, the Wednesday before, with a flip of Georgia commit. Also, Alabama thought they were going to flip him and had a conniption come apart, the first of their come aparts on social media. DeMarcus Reddick flips from Georgia to Auburn 5-star linebacker. If that wasn't enough for you, the hype began to build for the weekend with big names from across the state and surrounding areas, and apparently across the country too, coming into town. The big highlights from the weekend: Malcolm Simmons was your first commit on that Saturday, a wide receiver from right down the road, Alexander City. Perry Thompson, the biggest news, a flip from Alabama. Let me say that again, folks. A 5-star wide receiver flipping from Alabama. Absolutely crazy. There were surprise commits of UGA that showed up to this event. Hugh got tossed in a pool. You heard me right. KJ Bolden may be committing soon, maybe. Others might be committing soon, those from maybe in as far away as California. Did I miss anything highlights-wise, Austin?
I'm sure you did, but that just points to what kind of weekend it was, right?
Right.
People hoped and people thought with the Hugh Freeze hire, this might be the hire that gets Auburn back on track because of the fit, because of how he's been known to work in this conference and how he's been known to work on the recruiting trail. I just don't know if anybody had a really good idea that it would happen before the man's even coached a game yet.
Right.
And here we are. And look, these guys are not suiting up for Auburn this year. They're not guaranteed to be on that final signing day spot until the name is on the paper. We know that all too well. However, to have this kind of recruiting momentum, and not just have the recruiting momentum, but to have it directly pulling from the top two programs in the country right now, who are also your biggest rivals, it couldn't have turned out any better for Auburn. So you mentioned Perry Thompson, you mentioned DeMarcus Riddick. Those are two of the only 4 5-star athletes in the class of 2024 in the state of Alabama. There's only 4, folks, and half of them are coming to Auburn as of right now. That's unheard of over the last decade and a half, for sure. And so an amazing tribute to this staff, and congratulations to them on a job well done. They would tell you for sure that we're not done yet. Correct, Kyle?
That's what I've told.
There's still work to be done. But I mean, what a weekend. And I think there wasn't as much as the shock factor for a lot of people. We'd heard the rumblings for a while that Perry was probably going to flip, and of the things that were planned. But to see it all come to fruition, and to see Auburn, be the talk of college football recruiting for there even just a day was something exciting.
What's almost enjoyable is just watching mainly Alabama fans, but Georgia fans trying to wrestle with this concept. You're hearing the things, we didn't want them anyway. And you've already seen certain people's rankings being dropped. You can guarantee if you switch to Auburn as a major recruit, you will have your ranking drop. It's always happens. I'm not saying there's a conspiracy, but there's a conspiracy. But regardless of, this is why I tell people don't invest so much in stars and rankings, because you will only be disappointed at some point, because all it is just a bunch of stuff anyway. But regardless of that, you can't deny what's happening here. Hugh Freeze has put Alabama and Georgia on notice. The two most prominent names in college football right now, at least consistently year in and year out at this point where we're talking. And what might be, at least for the foreseeable future right now, too, letting them know it's not just you two in this race, in the recruiting arms race in this region. We're here too, and we're not going anywhere. And this is just the first, shot across the bow, right?
Sure.
This could be a big flat thing next year for all we know. We're not sitting here saying that we are back officially, but for now, we are back on the recruiting trail. So let's tackle it from this stint. 2 wide receivers on the same day at Big Cat Weekend. Malcolm Simmons, not KJ. I'm kind of be from premonitions there, I guess. Help me. Wow, I'm blanking on his name now.
Perry Thompson.
Oh, Perry Thompson. So much excitement. 2 wide receivers, same day. Walker White, who will be at some point, if all goes according to plan, their quarterback at some point. Thoughts on that dynamic and those guys getting to be together to celebrate that day?
Yeah, I mean, I think we don't know, and I'm not going to speculate for sure that this is what it was, but we've heard in the past about making, there's an element to timing these things up, right? Even if it's, hey, I'd like to commit. Hey, why don't you do that at Big Cat Weekend? I'm not saying that happened, but I'm saying a lot of the times we've seen that, that can build some momentum. To have those guys there as part of it, I think makes it more special. It gives off we've seen many times, and even this weekend, I think you mentioned the California lineman, DeAndre Carter. He mentioned the family atmosphere. People get that when they come to Auburn, regardless. It has been talked about for years, despite who the coach is, despite what cool things we're going to do in recruiting. The family atmosphere has been a mainstay of what people say when they come to Auburn. But I think things like that, and especially things like Big Cat Weekend, and when you have guys who are already commits that can come in and kind of enhance that, like Walker White, I think that plays a role. And I think that was all, these coaches, yes, we think of them as the X's and O's and being really good at their job to coach, but they also have to be really good at people,
right,
in relationships and recruiting. And I think that all that plays into that. So far, it looks like Hugh Freeze is doing a great job with that. I mean, I just love when kids also just recruit, for Auburn. And and so much of this can be a me thing, but when their guys get locked in with who they're with, and then they want to say, all right, how can I help you? Who do we want to go after? I mean, Walker White's been doing that since the day after he committed, figuring out who he wants to play with. And so all that is working out so far.
Oh, and listen, the hero behind this in some ways is Walker White. Let's not even mince words on that. This kid has been sold out for Auburn, been sold out for building a future for himself and others here, and has really done a great job of selling himself as a leader and as a player. And now he's seeing the fruits of that coming true with the obviously major assistance of the current team, the current staff. And when you've got, I'm going to use it, alignment, it's amazing what happens, isn't it?
It matters. It matters. And this weekend's a huge piece of evidence for it. I'm not going to say that without alignment, all this couldn't have happened. It certainly could have, I think, but it certainly makes it a lot easier when there is that. And there's a lot of fault to kind of point around at that of why it hasn't been that way before. The good news is it appears like it's here now. And I think people are starting to notice that. And that is excellent news if you are an Auburn Tiger.
Very happy with things so far. Let's take a really brief look ahead off of Big Cat Weekend, because what I tell people a lot is you might see what you're expecting and some of those commits happening. And we saw the ones I think everybody anticipated, Simmons, and then obviously Perry Thompson. There was some hope that maybe we would see maybe a third, saw some people predicting a fourth, but sometimes the seeds are laid here. That's or right. As you said, it could be a little orchestration. Let's spread this love out a little bit, you know, and plan these things out. All of that could be at play here, but sometimes you have to wait a little bit. The big name is KJ Bolden, who, from where we're talking about a week from now, will be announcing his commitment. What are you feeling about that right now? How confident are you that he might decide to be an Auburn Tiger?
Based on his own quotes, it seems pretty confident, right? I think he said Auburn's top 2 right now. He's said that he's going to talk to Coach Freeze. Will be the last person he talks to before he makes a decision. You have to feel good about that with Auburn.
Right.
This was his last visit before he makes a decision. I think it's probably going to come down to who gets him on the phone as much as possible this week and who can give him that kind of feel-good story. Kind of looks like it's between Auburn and Free Shoes University, Florida State. We'll see where it all goes Saturday. But I think if after this past weekend and after that kind of atmosphere and the quotes that have come out of it, you have to feel pretty confident. And it's even crazy for me to just think about that, Kyle, that I think he's a top 5 player in the country.
Depends on where you look. Again, with the rankings and stuff,
sure.
You never know. But somebody he probably is. Yes,
very high up there. To even be considering that as an option before this staff has coached a game yet is mind-boggling.
It is. So that's another one. And then you've already mentioned DeAndre Carter, which would be weird. A guy from California deciding to come to Auburn, but that speaks to what he's seeing and what he's feeling here. Right. Now, this is a guy that's also considering going to like Michigan State potentially too. So he obviously is not unopposed to traveling far, but to see a little small college town like Auburn get on the map for him that's a pretty big deal. So whether you're excited about the beginning of all this, DeMarcus Riddick, whether you're excited about the flip of Perry Thompson, the commit of Simmons, the big surprises that are currently committed to Georgia that showed up, or what may be to come, I think you and I can definitively say that this Big Cat Weekend was a huge success. As a final comment on it, is this the best ever?
The best ever Big Cat Weekend?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I'm not a historian on Big Cat
Weekend,
it's but I think it'd have to. I mean, you've got to consider it. You absolutely have to consider it for when you take into obviously the flips and the recruits that committed and who all was there. But I just can't get over the fact that this staff has not even stepped foot for a game in Jordan-Hare Stadium yet as the Auburn coaching staff. And they pulled off something like that. But it's pretty remarkable.
It's definitely up there for conversation, if the best one ever. Only time will tell. My gut is telling me that we'll be talking about some other great ones very, very soon. We're going to keep the football love going because it is almost here. We still got a little bit of a ways.
Almost.
Still talking season, so we're going to talk about it. Fall camp, depending on when you are listening to this, it starts for us in about 3 days on Wednesday, August 2nd. Which, by the way, is that earlier than normal? I know it's at the beginning of August, but I always felt like it was August 7th or 9th or a little bit later. Is that just me?
I'm not sure. It feels early, but then you think about it, and that's a month until the first game. So with them, it always feels like they kind of want to get some time in before classes start, so they have their
Yeah.
full attention. So I'm not sure when classes start. I think it's maybe 2 weeks later.
Usually that's how it lays out, about 2 weeks from when classes start. But
so
we shall
it's
see.
early, but I mean, good for them.
It feels a little bit earlier, but I'm not complaining about it because listen, we all need something to distract us at this point to get to that actual opening day for college football, at least for Auburn football, even though there's now a week 0. That's so weird. All right, but let's talk about month 0, I guess, and fall camp. This is always very exciting to discuss. At the start, it gets kind of dull towards the middle because there's only so much you can speculate and talk about, and only so much we can take away from what's being shared through the media with fall camp. And we'll do some of that along the way. But I just like to do like an informal preview of it. I've got some questions, but is there a topic like off your mind first that you'd like to discuss around looking ahead to fall camp? And then if you take one of my questions, I'll fill them in after that.
Nothing super stands out. I think we're all obviously wondering. The main position group we all want to know what's going to happen is, of course, long snapper. No, it's quarterback.
We know what's happening. Reed Hughes is going to be doing some awesome videos this year. Come on. I mean, that's not even a question at this point. Running with Reed, one of the best like social media phenomenons ever. I mean, come on. We know that.
Obviously, we know that that's taken care of. But I mean, quarterback. I'm sure that was one of your 5 questions.
It was actually not my first one, but let's go ahead and talk about it. That was number 2. But the quarterback position. So thoughts?
I mean, it's what we all want to know, right? It's what every team wants to know. If it's not already established, who's your quarterback going to be? And Auburn at this moment does not have a certified quarterback 1 starter. I think when you look at Robbie Ashford and Peyton Thorne, those are your 2 that are going to be, one of them is going to be the guy. It's going to come down to this last month to kind of see how they do well in practice, how they do well communicating, leading the team, for Hugh Freeze to pick his guy. I think, and I heard a lot of people talking about this during media days, I think it'd be silly not to play both of them. I don't mean that as in like we play, we alternate series and we do the whole mumbo jumbo thing again. But I think that we know, everyone that has watched Robbie, regardless of how you feel about how well he did as a quarterback, he has the athleticism that can help you on the field. And so I think Robbie will play if he's not the quarterback 1. But those are all things to be determined and things they're going to have to work out during fall camp before the real games get going.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, if your quarterback's not set, that's where everybody's mind goes, and I understand completely that. But it's only question 2, but just my quick take on it. I think if you are not at least leaning that Peyton Thorne is going to be the starter, you're not being honest and just trying to create a story, basically. But when I say that, please hear me. Robbie Ashford does not need to be removed from this situation and the possibility of starting.
Sure.
We have seen what Hugh Freeze does with especially mobile quarterbacks. We know that Robbie's got some things to work on from what we've seen from his path, the few games that we've had with him on throwing and accuracy and things like that. But he's also thrown some pretty good gems too. So when you take talent like that with the right coaching, maybe you never know what can happen. It's hard to also argue with Peyton Thorne's experience, and he's not an unmobile quarterback himself. Both have had some injuries. So I think we are going to see both, obviously one more significantly than the other, but in enough time to kind of get a good look at all of them. I don't want to also dismiss Holden Geriner from this equation. I think you also have to be honest and say it's those 2 guys, but he's going to have a shot at this thing too. Sure. I really like the way that Hugh laid it out at media days. Let me go back to question number 1. Jarquez Hunter.
Yeah.
Without going into the alleged controversy, there is a question of whether he will play / have some repercussions for alleged events. I think it's been basically in the back channels of, I'll say, social media message boards that he is going to play. And I have not once doubted that, but it is a big question. So if we get to Wednesday, we see him out there dressed out, that's going to make people feel better, but we won't really know true what is or isn't going to happen on that front until he does or doesn't suit up and run out there as the starting running back, because right now he's the starting running back and should be assumed as much. Is that a fair way to take it?
I think that's a fair way to take it. And I think we will see him out there at fall practice on Wednesday. I'm not saying that I know anything. I'm not saying I wouldn't surprise me either if he's not there for the first game, just because it's, it is punishment, but it's also UMass. But in a way, with the way things transpired, regardless of what actually happened, how it happened, no matter what, I think all involved kind of agree that, there has to be something done here because of, one, how public it is, and just two, there's an investigation further that has gone on, and
yes,
they've been able to figure that out themselves. But
right.
It wouldn't surprise me. I don't think that should concern anyone.
Right.
But I think, obviously him being with this team raises their floor and ceiling much more. You want to have him there if he should be there. And I think that everything will end up turning out okay. But that has to be number one question. That's why you're the host and I'm your co-host. You think about those things.
The quarterback is very important, but we need to secure those things that we know. We know we have a great running back room regardless. But
absolutely,
we know that we have quite a talent in Jarquez Hunter, and we would like to have him out there as long as he can be out there. So we'll wait and see. Don't read too much into anything. And everybody just sit back and chill out on that for a little bit is all I could say. Last couple questions that I had, or few questions, I guess I should say to be correct. Question number 3. What does the offensive line rotation look like? So many new faces, Austin. It seems like maybe a lot of these upperclassmen transfers are going to be the ones that fill in. Maybe a Jeremiah Wright still in there. Maybe a Tate Johnson works his way back in if he's, healthy enough. Any quick thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of transfers brought in, like a lot of guys with other experience. We've talked about them before. It's not so much about talent. It is, you want to have big guys and you want to have guys that are physically demanding, but also talented. But you got to have guys that'll gel together too. And
right.
We've talked about how working as one and working as a collective unit is how that offensive line, trusting each other is how that offensive line is going to be at its best. So figuring out the rotation and figuring out those guys of who's going to be your best 5 to be out there at one time is the challenge for Coach Jake Thornton and Phil Montgomery and Hugh Freeze. So that is a big question, and one that I think Auburn's offensive line, we're not where we were when it was the absolute worst thing and we were all complaining about it all the time. But there's still progress and a ways to go to make sure that it can help this offense to its full potential.
Absolutely. Question number 4 that I have, it's again a broad one, even broader than that offensive line one. More than just the defensive line, but that front 7. We all know that defensive backs just return so much talent, and we return talent too on the front 7, but who's going to be in that mix and what's it going to look like, especially under a Ron Roberts defense? You can go back and look at what he did previously and say, oh, surely that's what he's going to do. You don't know what talent he has here to work with and how he's going to have to adjust that. Is there maybe for just quick answer for this, is there a name that you expect to be prominent in that front 7 at least?
Yeah, I don't want to harp on the transfers, but I hope and expect that Justin Rogers from Kentucky is a big guy. I mean, that was a guy wanted by lots of programs for what he's already done and what he can be capable of doing. And so I hope that him transferring from Kentucky to Auburn is big. Auburn needs guys that are willing to get down and dirty and plug up the holes on the defensive line. So hoping that he's involved. With the losses of guys that we kind of expected to step up, I'm thinking of Dylan Brooks and others. I'm hoping that those guys who are ready to step up can be. Jason Jones might be one that I'm hoping can kind of take a next step forward and be involved a lot this year too. So is there anyone you're thinking of that I'm missing there?
Elijah McAllister.
Of course.
Listen, I'm going to continue to pump this man as much as I can. He is an impressive specimen off and on the field. And look, I don't know how this is all going to shake out in fall camp, who's going to earn what playing time. I just know that I'm glad I have that guy on my team. And proud that he is going to be a leader for that team.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Elijah McAllister.
That's good.
So I'm just going to stick to that for now. It's my cheat code right now, because I think I can win on all aspects with that. And my final question, just more of a fun one. Is there going to be anything different about this fall camp? Like, does Hugh Freeze, do something differently? Is there a different way of spreading out the practices? Is there a different style? That's probably not a question you and I can answer, right?
Sure.
We probably can't answer that one, but it's just something that I'd like for you, the Auburn family, to ponder and just pay attention to. Is there something different that maybe we'll talk about on a next episode? So in kind of a roundabout order, those were the 5 questions that I personally had, and I wanted us to kind of touch on just as
I like it.
Informal preview to what will be, I'm sure, an exciting and fun, drawn out fall camp too, because we are all waiting to see the Hugh Freeze era. Just sit back, folks, because September 20th, September 2nd will be here before you know it. That's going to do it for episode 45 of the Auburn Experience podcast. We appreciate you all hanging out with us tonight. If you want to reach out to us on social media, you can find me on the X sphere, I guess. Not the Twitter sphere, but Twitter/X. You can find me. Sounds so weird. At Kyle Loomis 24, and you can follow E2C Network anywhere that you can find social media and content, basically. Austin, where can they find you?
You can find me on Austin G. Scott on any kind of platform. I don't know why. We've had so many social media platform developments while doing this podcast.
Don't
wish that evil on me. It's getting incredibly nauseating. I like the bird. I wish we would just keep the bird on the Twitter app, but we'll get off. If that's the one I'm getting crotchety out, we need to.
I was about to say,
episode.
We'll need another crotchety old man segment, so save that for another day. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Until we talk to you again. War Eagle.
War Eagle.